have the Skin Protection Act, Bill 30 passed in the province, which now restricts access to youth to tanning beds. So no one under the age of 18 can now access a tanning bed in the province. So we're extremely proud of that accomplishment, and it's through the help of a lot of our volunteers, but certainly the Minister of Health and a number of us working very diligently on that portfolio that we've got that passed. So we're very thankful for that, and most provinces in Canada now have similar legislation, but we're continuing to work with other provinces to ensure that that is also passed. We'd love to see it banned completely, because we also know that UV radiation is a leading form of cancer-causing issue for melanoma and other forms of skin cancer. So we really want to push to ensure that at least that avenue of skin cancer is closed down for everyone. We were also very pleased as an organization this past year to commit $237,000 to a research grant for McGill and also here at the Ontario Institute of Cancer Research. It's actually in a program as well that Dr. Joshua is helping to lead into areas of unresearched melanoma. So we're very pleased as an organization. It's not a huge amount. We'd love to see millions of dollars being poured into additional research for patients, but we know that that is to come down the road with your continued support and help as an organization. So our organization, as I said, was founded in 2009. We became a registered charity in 2010. We have a wonderful board of directors. A number of the leading physicians in the country are on our board as well. But we have a very active board, a very patient-focused board as well. And we continue to try to raise awareness for melanoma and put it on the roadmap in Canada. So some of the programs that we have been actively involved in trying to promote our patient publications, which you'll see outside. Our newsletter, we've got an excellent newsletter. If you haven't signed up for it, please do. We've got new copies of the latest one that was hot off the press. I picked them up yesterday. So it's actually received critical acclaim from other hospitals across the country, so we're very, very proud of it. We also have a patient support hotline, peer support, teleconferences once a month that are free for patients or caregivers across the country. We are expanding our peer-to-peer support program, and this program is really to link up melanoma patients of a similar diagnosis or profile with each other anywhere in the country. We're a small group, but we're mighty, so we don't always have people accessible in the same city or area, but we certainly do have people to link you up with across the country. And that's really to be able to have somebody to talk about your own disease or your experience, and to support another that might be newly diagnosed. So we're really looking to expand this program in the new year. And I just know there's a few very hungry people out there that would love to volunteer for that program. I can just see it in your eyes already. So there's a few of you I'd love to see if we could twist your arm to give us a hand. We're a small organization, as I said. Diane, who many of you have met, give us a wave back there. She's the manager in charge of these events and volunteer coordination. Diane works only part-time, but actually full-time. We just tell her it's just part-time. But it's actually full-time. I volunteer on a full-time basis, so I gave up my real paying job. My husband's still married to me. And we do have one other full-time person in our marketing communications. So we're a small organization. We do rely on a lot of donations, and we rely on your support as well through a volunteer program. So I would encourage a few of you, if you have the opportunity, to even spare an hour a month or something to that effect, if you'd like to volunteer for any type of program. But this peer-to-peer program is one that we're really focusing on because we've got a lot of need from patients calling in and wanting further information or wanting to link up with other patients. And we do provide training for that. It's not a huge commitment of time, but it's a really high value-add program as well. We also conduct patient education sessions like this across the country. We've been on our dog and pony show, I call it, across the country right now. We've just did Ottawa, we were in Jerminski and Hamilton previously. We've done Montreal, Nova Scotia, Calgary. So we certainly try to connect the dots for patients and give them an opportunity to learn more about the disease and ask questions that you may not be able to get in those fleeting moments when your busy doctors are running out the door. So we also have online discussion forums. So we get over 2,500 visitors to our online discussion forum every month, and that's a very active forum where patients can, again, anonymously ask questions or share information or support other patients online. So I encourage you to visit that as well. We also do a lot on the avenue of prevention and awareness. It's one of our fundamental pillars of this organization. So not only do we work on the tanning bed legislation, but we are also in the process of developing a national youth education program to help create a behavior change, which is a difficult one if you've ever dealt with a young person or a teenager, even ourselves. So we've been actively developing this program, and we hope to do a launch with the Ontario Camp Association this summer to pilot the program, and also to work as requested through schools and through the Eco School program in Ontario, and then hopefully expand that across the country. So a lot of what we do is also public awareness and education of healthcare professionals. We've got a great online video. If many of you haven't seen it, we'll be playing it today. We've done a few of those actually, but one we worked in tandem with the Douglas Wright Foundation to develop, one produced by Dr. Mike Evans. And we also work very hard behind the scenes on drug therapy approval. We've provided 5 submissions for different types of new drug therapies for melanoma, and 1 for basal cell carcinoma as well. And that takes a lot of time and resources for us as well to prepare these submissions to PCODR, which is the Pan-Canadian Drug Oncology Review Board. That's the board that actually looks at any new drug for cancer treatment in the country and works to assess whether or not they make a recommendation to the provinces to pick up and pay for that drug. And as many of you know who may be on therapies, some of these drug therapies can cost over $100,000 per treatment, so a very expensive drug therapy. So there needs to be an active patient community behind that to certainly encourage the government where there has been proven a need, which we certainly do have as a patient community, but also an opportunity for different options for patients, which we also need as well. And we've also participated in very significant national cancer groups to help put melanoma on the map, so to speak. We're very active. I participate on all of the Canadian Cancer Clinical Trials Network, Canadian Partnership Against Cancer, the Cancer Research Alliance, the Ontario Sun Safety Working Group, and also with Cancer Care Ontario. So I, have a lot to do. So okay, and if you'd like to volunteer, we're always looking for some additional resources and help. So again, how you can help us is support a specific program that we may have. So I've already talked about some of those different things. If some of you are interested in doing youth education this summer, we've got lots of opportunities there. The peer teleconference, other types of prevention activities. We also would love you to help us in our fundraisers. Our national walk is scheduled now for the last Sunday in September every year. We just went through our second one, and we're very pleased to say that nationally we raised $117,000. For our organization, that's huge. May not be for other larger charities, but for this organization, it's actually fundamental for our operations, and we were just thrilled to have that participation. We would really like to see that grow, and would really welcome your participation in that, or your family's participation in that next year as well. And I would be remiss if I didn't spend a moment just to remind any of you that are heading south for the winter to ensure that you have knowledge of sun protection, and that you're wearing sun protective clothing, certainly covering up, wearing sunscreens as we all recommend, a broad spectrum sunscreen, and certainly protecting your eyes as well. We also know that as we're patients, we're probably very conscious of checking your body on a monthly basis, just to ensure that you're picking up any changes in any moles or lumps or bumps that may not have been there before. That's certainly how I've caught mine each time. The 3 diagnoses I've picked up myself, so that's not to say it won't be picked up by a physician, but over 50% of the the initial diagnosis of melanoma is picked up by the individual or a family member. So very important to be aware of that. So with that, I'm going to see if I can just play the video from Dr. Mike Evans.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Evans. I'm fair-skinned. I don't really tan. My freckles just connect. I sunburned as a kid, but I don't really have a family history of melanoma or lots of moles, and I've never used a tanning bed. I'm sharing these personal details because today our topic is melanoma. Melanoma makes up only 3 to 5% of skin cancer, yet it accounts for about 75% of the death, killing 1 out of 8 patients who get the disease. Melanoma is also on the rise. It's the fastest growing preventable cancer in North America, with the mortality rate among white people over 65 more than doubling in the past 30 years. It also kills young people. Melanoma is the second most common form of cancer for young adults aged 15 to 29, and the most common cancer for people 25 to 29. So let's begin with the causes. Numero uno is UV light, aka sunlight, and its effect on our skin. And I think the medical profession tends to send mixed messages about sun and health, and so here's my position. I think it's good to get outside, in my view mostly for activity. We tend to do things outside that are good for our mental health and our quality of life. What does seem problematic is the cultural construct of intentionally sitting in the sun in order to get darker, as if that shows you are healthier. You know, it makes me think about my parents. They used to fly somewhere sunny on holidays and sunbathe for a week, as if how tan they got reflected the success of the trip. All that's changed. Now they go cycling or exploring somewhere. If they're outside in the sun, they put on some sunscreen and a hat. They rate the success of their trip based on things they experience or friendships, not how dark they got. To put this in a less romantic way, when a dermatologist, that's a doctor trained in skin diseases, sees your tan, he or she actually doesn't see a tan, they see sun damage. Now, when it comes to the chances of developing melanoma, a lot of the risk factors depend on you. So let's start with your skin. A simple way to think about your skin is to classify it as very fair, fair, olive, light brown, or very dark. You know, likely there's some cultural interpretation here, but if your skin is very fair or fair, typically with lighter hair and blue eyes, the sun is, in many ways, your adversary. If your skin is darker, even those burns that turn into tans raise your risk, but your overall risk is lower. Next is your family history. About 10% of melanoma is hereditary. If you have a family history, especially when your relative was diagnosed under 40 years of age, mention this to your care team and take extra precautions. Another consideration is the amount of moles you have. Once you get over 25 moles, your risk goes up, especially if the moles are sometimes unusual, such as being bigger or having a funny shape. An evolving risk factor is the practice of so-called indoor tanning, so tanning beds, booths, or sun lamps. A recent meta-analysis in the British Medical Journal calculated that just one indoor tanning session increases your chance of developing melanoma by 20%, and each additional session during that same year boosts the risk almost another 2%. I must say, reviewing the data on this, I hadn't realized how common indoor tanning is. According to the U.S. surveillance data from the CDC, up to 1/3 of high school girls are doing this. I'm not sure where celebrities stand on this, but the World Health Organization is pretty clear, as they classify tanning beds as a Group 1 carcinogen alongside tobacco and asbestos. The next step is to understand what a melanoma looks like. Research tells us that most melanoma is actually diagnosed by patients and their partners, not their doctors.
Yeah, baby.
And in medicine, we use a mnemonic called ABCDE to score moles. It's definitely not perfect, and as with other screening strategies, we see the trade-off of false alarms and unnecessary biopsies versus the possibility of finding disease earlier when we have more options. A stands for asymmetry. As you can see in this visual, this is normal, this is asymmetrical. B stands for border, what we call a variegated border. So think the coast of Great Britain. C stands for more than one color. D stands for diameter, basically bigger than the eraser on the head of your pencil, or 6 millimeters equals a higher risk. E stands for evolving. If your mole is changing over time, so enlarging or elevating, an evolving mole would be the one characteristic that I would see a clinician about by itself. The research shows this sign is the most concerning. In fact, 3 times stronger as a predictor compared to the other signs. If any mole or new spot doubles in size or turns black in any 1 or 2 month period, it's time to get it checked. If you're not sure, take a picture. As you have more of these signs, your risk goes up. So if you have the first 3, your risk of having a positive biopsy result goes from, say, 5% to 15%. Having said that, most of the biopsies, where we put in a little freezing, pull off a little skin, and send it to the lab, come back showing no problem. When we look at the science of doing skin checks in partnership with your doctor, there really hasn't been much quality evidence showing effectiveness of screening. However, a cohort trial that started in July 2003, but just recently reported, is interesting. Basically, all of the residents of a German state were offered free skin checks for 1 year. Almost 20% of the population took up the offer. Melanoma detection increased by 34% during the year of the study, many of these smaller and thinner than previously identified. When they followed up with the participants 5 years after screening, melanoma mortality was reduced by about 50%. So I'm going to finish off with a little prevention advice, what we call slip, slop, slap, seek, and slide. So here goes. Slip on some clothing to protect from the sun. Slop on some SPF 30 sunscreen, but remember, suntan lotion is a double-edged sword. Obviously it's protective, but in some ways it's also a false reassurance. People who wear sunscreen to stay out in the sun all the time can actually have higher rates of melanoma. When you do go in the sun, slop on more than you think and aim to reapply every 2 to 4 hours and sooner if sweating, swimming, and so on. Slap on a hat. So much of the skin cancer we see is on the head, face, and ears. Seek shade, especially between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. And finally, protect your eyes. Slide on some sunglasses. In the end, let me give you a not one-size-fits-all message, but one that focuses on high risk. If you're in your teens or 20s, let's make a deal. You want to look beautiful. I get that. But let me ask you a question. What's wrong with the skin you were born with? Are you really going to change it because of an ad campaign or a picture in a magazine? Your skin was actually the healthiest the way it looked when you were a child. Don't lie down and bake in the sun or a tanning bed, even if you have sunscreen on. A base tan is not healthy. It's just skin that has been cooked slightly. If you have fair skin and burn like me, take a deep breath and face reality. You will not tan like your friend with olive skin. I know, it's a drag, but that's life. We all have our challenges, and if having to be a bit more prepared for sunny days is it, then I think you're doing okay. Maybe being fair is also a special quality, as you have a built-in motivation to protect your skin from aging. Health is often about making small changes to our habits. Having a spare hat and sun cream in all your places, especially if you're a parent, car, boat, bag, travel kit, golf bag, and so on. Be aware of high-risk situations you can't control, sitting at or participating in sports events, going on adventures. Tell people, hey, I sunburn easily, and I'd prefer not to get skin cancer. Go for walks, play sports, ski, sail, whatever you do, but be smart about it. Finally, if you have a mole that is scoring high on the A, B, C, D, E scale, especially if a mole is changing in the last few months, get it checked. It's time to change your thinking, not your skin. Hope this helps, and take care out there.
Many of you have him as your oncologist. He is my oncologist, and I am so appreciative of all the work and time that he devotes in our organization. He's also on our board of directors. He's incredibly busy. He has two young children and one on the way. And so I know his home life is extremely busy, so we certainly appreciate his time to come out this morning and talk to us a little bit about what's new in the realm of melanoma. So without further ado, I will introduce him to you and have him walk us through his presentation. Thank you, Dr. Duggan.
Thank you all for coming, and it's an honour to speak with you today. Thank you, Annette, for inviting me. What I will talk to you about is what's new and exciting in melanoma in 2013, and it's really very exciting. There is something new and exciting in melanoma, because we gave this talk 5 years ago, 10 years ago. There would be nothing that was new, and certainly nothing that would be exciting. So it's really exciting that melanoma has come to the forefront of cancers that can be treated successfully, even when they are advanced, and that's stemmed from a number of important insights into what makes melanoma grow, and also important insights into the immune system. And so I'll be talking about some of them today. When a doctor gives a talk, what you generally do is you tell to make the audience to make sure you don't have any conflicts of interest. So I'm not paid, no drug companies are paying me into my pocket, so you should know that. And the other conflict of interest is always hope that at least will be something. So what do we know? So we know that melanoma in Canada is a problem. This number here, the lifetime probability of developing melanoma in 1930 in Canada was 1 in 1,500, because everyone used to walk around in suits and bowler hats, and that's how you did your business. No one went south, and no one really wore shorts that much, or short sleeve shirts or t-shirts. Certainly sunbaking wasn't really de rigueur until Coco Chanel drove from Paris south one summer and got a tan in the late 30s, and that's when it became very trendy. So so this number is somewhat alarming, and I'll show you that it may actually be getting worse. We do have melanoma deaths in Canada. We would be hopeful by the end of this talk that these are going to reduce, and then this lifetime probability of dying is also hopefully going to be reducing. This is what we're concerned about, is this lifetime risk of developing melanoma. Mind you, this is the US, but still you can see what's happening here. This is 1930, and this is projected for 2015. So this is to do with sun exposure and perhaps tanning beds, but certainly the sun-loving lifestyle has become popular, but has unfortunate side effects, especially for people with fair skin. The good news is that sunscreen works. So there was some doubt that actually putting on sunscreen regularly would be a sensible thing to do, but actually it does work. So here is a study that was carried out where I'm from a place called Rockhampton. We call it Rocky for short. It's what Australians do. It's too many syllables. We just say the first two. It's too complicated to say multi-syllable. So this is a study done in Rocky. And in Rocky, what they did is they gave people sunscreen. They told them to use it, and they were using it for a number of years. And then they said, and they stopped. And they followed those people closely, and they worked out how many people got melanoma after they were using the sunscreen. And it turns out, you can see here, the people that didn't get the sunscreen after 13, 14, 15 years, they got a greater percentage of them got melanoma compared to the people that did use the sunscreen. So sunscreen works. It prevents melanoma. If you're in a sunny environment, you should be putting on melanoma. UV light from the sun causes melanoma, as does UV light from suntan beds. So what's exciting and what's new? So before 2002, we really didn't know much about melanoma. We know what it did, and we had one chemotherapy that was developed in 1968 that is what we used to treat melanoma with, and we knew sometimes the immune system helped. We didn't know that much else. But then we, really the first insight from sort of these new DNA technologies showed us that actually in melanoma there is a mutated gene. This gene is called BRAF, and some of you in the audience may have heard of it. And this gene makes the melanoma grow. So it's like an engine in a car. I sort of tell, some of you may have heard me use the analogy. It's like putting a Lamborghini engine into a Toyota or a Ford. It shouldn't be there, and it makes the thing go completely out of control. So, not surprisingly, when you've found that there is this engine that shouldn't be there, you try and design a key for the lock. And so Roche designed this drug called vemurafenib, which stops the Porsche being a Porsche and turns it back into this, I don't know what that is, but it turns it back into that, which is what it should be, is a slow, something that doesn't really go anywhere fast at all. And so the first article, and this is the sort of biggest medical journal, it's called the New England Journal of Medicine, showed that if you give this drug, vemurafenib, to people that have melanoma that has this mutation, and it's probably about 40% of people overall, you can help them live longer. And this is Canadians, this is Dr. Hogue, my colleague, he contributed, as did we all. to patients, and there was patients were given this drug. The first patients were found to have this mutation, and then half the patients were given this drug and half the patients were given this chemotherapy. And as it turns out, you don't have to worry about what that means, but this is what the take-home message was a couple of years ago. How long did it take the tumour to grow again? So the patients that took the vemurafenib, it took the tumour 6.9 months to grow again versus 1.6 months if they got the chemo. And so that was really a revolution. We had never had anything like it before. This was a drug that stopped melanoma in its tracks, and but there was still a problem. You can see the problem here is that these curves is the percentage of people that were alive. This didn't flatten out. This wasn't curing melanoma, but it was helping people live longer. So here's how long did patients live for. So the patients who took this drug lived 13.6 months compared to patients who took the chemo lived for 9.7 months. And this was at the time controversial. There was a New York Times piece on this. There were two cousins in Texas who went on this trial, one of whom got the chemo, one of whom got the pill. And as you read through the article, the cousin that got the chemo in the end of the article passed away, and the cousin that got the pill was still alive at the end of the article. I don't know what's happened to them since. But this is the unfortunate theme that will come up in the talk. We have very exciting medications for melanoma. We really want to use a lot of them, but unfortunately, especially those drugs in trials, are not generally available to give out because there are very strict regulations from the FDA, from Health Canada, about running a trial, about giving out these medications when they're still at the exploratory stage. So we had a lot of problems a couple of years ago when we were doing this study. We really wanted patients to get the vemurafenib, but the only way they could get the drug was to go on the trial, and on the trial there was a 50% chance they would get the chemo. So fortunately, because of this trial, this drug is now approved, it's available in Ontario, the province pays for it, and so that's a nice story. Unfortunately, as I said to you, the unfortunate thing about this drug is it doesn't work permanently. So here's a poor fellow that's got melanoma. He took the vemurafenib, it literally all went away, but then it came back. So we need to think about what else could we do. We're putting the lock in the key, we're trying to turn it off, but is there anything else we can do? And if you look at this picture, this is a normal melanoma here, and these are some of the normal engines which normally just turn over at a slow pace. This is this mutation in BRAF here that makes this cell turn over and survive and proliferate much more than it otherwise would. So some bright spark came up with the idea, well, if we're turning off the engine, why don't we put on the handbrake as well, or the foot brake, whatever analogy you prefer to use, and we'll not only will we block this, but we'll block the one underneath it as well. So that's called MEK. So that gene is called MEK. So you turn off the BRAF and you turn off the MEK. So that way you're turning off the engine, you're putting up the handbrake, hopefully the car's not going to go anywhere. So does that work? And so these trials are still being done. And so in fact, I can tell you the theory behind it was so persuasive that there are 3 trials which have all finished, but we don't know the answer yet. But I can tell you when they did the early trials, this is called the phase 2 trials, it's not a trial that will allow the drug company to go to Health Canada, go to Ocular and say, can I sell these drugs? This is a trial just for the doctors to understand what happens. You can see here the patients that, this is the patients that had the both drugs together, and these are drugs from a drug company called GSK, compared to the one which just inhibits the BRAF. You can see that it almost doubles the time that it takes for the tumour to grow again. So that's very persuasive, that I can tell you that the tumour won't grow for double the time that it otherwise would if you're turning off the engine and you're pulling up the handbrake. So as a result, this company, Glaxo, as well as Roche, have now completed trials where they've given these drugs not to 54 and 54 people, but more like 400 and 400 people, so they can then take the package and go to Washington and go to Ottawa and say, we'd like to sell these drugs and give them to patients together because they help patients live longer. We don't know the answer to that yet. But this is certainly, the early data is certainly very persuasive. And so we will hopefully hear about that in the not too distant future. So the next thing that I need to talk to you about, we've learned how we can turn off the melanoma, is what can the immune system do to keep the cancer away. So as it turns out, in melanoma, a lot. So we always knew that melanoma was a little bit strange because there were patients maybe once or twice a year. We just had a patient last week where the melanoma goes away by itself. For no apparent reason, the melanoma starts to shrink. And there's no other reason why that would happen other than the fact that the immune system is attacking the melanoma and has recognized that it's like an infection. It shouldn't be there, and so the immune system comes to attack it. So people thought, well, if the immune system can do this randomly, maybe we can sort of give the immune system a little bit of a kick and get the immune system to act much more effectively. So this is a diagram of what happens in your immune system when the immune system is starting to recognize anything foreign, which may include cancer. So here, these cells on the bottom are the cells which are called antigen-presenting cells. They pick up pieces of cancer and they give it to T cells, which are the attacking cells. So they interact together, and eventually the T cell says, well, this thing, this red, it's the cancer, that looks bad, so I'm going to make it my job to activate and to attack anything that looks like that T cell. Now, unfortunately, in the body, there are checks and balances for every process. So you eat, you feel full, so you stop eating. Your immune system attacks an infection or attacks an infection, and then it stops attacking the infection. You don't have to do something to turn your immune system off after you have the flu. The immune system naturally turns off. So what the immune system does is that it has this thing here called CTLA4, which is, it's like an off switch for the immune system. So the immune system naturally turns itself off after it's been told to turn on by this cell, which has said, look, here's something red. That red thing is cancer, or that red thing is an infection. Go attack it. And so the immune system will, after a period of 48 hours, start to turn itself off. So what we needed, really, was something that turned off the off switch. So there's no brake anymore in the immune system. The immune system will not turn itself off. And so that drug is a drug called ipilimumab. It turns off the off switch. And so these T cells are potentiated, or they're perpetually on. So they go looking for things to attack. And so that is very much like having a T cell, which is like a Porsche, versus like having a T cell, which is this Lada car, or whatever it is, to have these Porsche T cells flying around your body, always on, moving very fast, trying to attack. And so that strategy, compared to having a T cell which is off, is very successful. So this trial that I'm about to tell you about really was a watershed in understanding how we can turn on the immune system, what the potential of the immune system is for melanoma. So in this clinical trial, this is a completed clinical trial, this is one that was taken as a package to the FDA and to Health Canada, and the drug company, in this case it's Bristol Myers Squibb, said, look, we've done this clinical trial. There were 676 patients. All these patients had melanoma, and all these patients had tried to do something already for their melanoma, be it chemotherapy or something else. And we gave them our drug, the ipilimumab, or we combined the ipilimumab with a vaccine, which we thought may help, or we gave them the vaccine by itself. And they said, look and see what happened. These are called survival curves. So you can see that in terms of this proportion of people that are alive. And the patients that took the vaccine, in fact, they didn't do very well. Vaccinating against something that looks like melanoma doesn't tend to work very well. But if you took our drug, ipilimumab, which turns off the off switch, so that the T cells are on, then not only do the patients live longer, You can see that's the green line. But it seems that actually some people are being cured. And in fact, we've confirmed this now, so the latest statistics have in fact validated this, that as opposed to most people dying from the melanoma who just got a vaccine, the patients that had their immune system potentiated, turned on, without having any more off switch, over 20% of them are alive and probably cured of their melanoma. So this is really a watershed in understanding how the immune system can help attack cancer. Really, people have been talking about the immune system and cancer for decades, and really nothing had happened that was an acceptable treatment which would have minimal side effects that could help cure cancer. And this was really the first time that the medical community had seen such an advance. So, and you can see here that activating the immune system can work very well. It can actually not work, however, as quickly as we would like. So here's a fellow that has melanoma on his back. He gets his ipilimumab. His immune system turns on, starts to attack these tumours, and these things look bigger. So as his doctor, you have to, and that is probably the case. So if I'd stuck a needle into this, looked at it under the microscope, that would, even though the tumours look bigger, they're full of immune cells attacking the tumour. And then you can see a month later, the immune system has done its job and these things are shrinking, and then 96 weeks later, there's nothing there at all. So we have to bear in mind the immune system works a little bit in mysterious ways. It has to find the tumour, it has to launch the attack, and all those things can sometimes take time, to the extent that sometimes patients look like things are getting worse before they get better. And here's another fellow who has some small deposits of melanoma in the liver. He has this drug, ipilimumab, and these deposits look actually like they're getting bigger, so things look like they're actually worse. But in fact, again, if you had stuck a needle into these, probably what you would have found is that they were full of immune cells which were attacking melanoma deposits that were there, and then things start to shrink and then they're gone completely. So that's a great story, to have a drug which turns off the off switch, and that you may have realized, though I didn't say it clearly, it does it in the blood or in the lymph nodes. It doesn't do it actually in the tumor. So people thought, well, maybe what we can do is we can turn on the immune system just inside the tumor. So that way, maybe there'll be fewer side effects, and maybe it will work better. So the scientists went looking for ways to turn on the immune system just inside the tumours, so that the immune system would hone in on that environment and then attack the tumour just in that area. And so it turns out that there's another important off switch, and that off switch is called PD-1 or PD-L1. And so what happens is the tumours they're wily little things, and so when patients develop melanoma, these T cells come into the tumour and they try and attack the tumour. And the tumours obviously don't like that, and so they start displaying little off switches on their arms and legs, so that if the immune system comes in, it bumps into an off switch and gets turned off. So that's what this big red cross is. So the immune system will be turning off the T cells which are attacking it inside the tumour. So the immune system will launch attack after attack, but every time a cell gets close to the tumour, it gets turned off. So it became clear through some experiments in mice and what have you, that if you blocked that off switch, which was different than the other off switch, because it's different because it's just an off switch which is inside the tumour, then interesting things could happen. And this is what is the 2013 exciting thing, because this is really this year that we've learned so much about these treatments. So again, you'll have an immune system which is more likely Porsche, but it'll be a Porsche just inside the tumour, not everywhere in your body. And so there are a couple of companies that have drugs which do this. And so one drug is called lambralizumab, or actually now it's called MK3475. And so you can see here, this is a plot of people that receive this drug. And you don't have to worry about the colours, but you can see here that the shrinkage of the tumours look fairly profound. There are some people in whom the tumours grew, but there are some people in whom, most of the people, the tumours shrank. And the important thing is that it works quite effectively. So here is a patient that's got a very large melanoma inside their liver. That's this grey thing. And you can see it's also here. And then they have this drug and it goes away. Here's another patient that has had chemotherapy, high-dose IL-2, as well as the ipilimumab that I told you about. And here's their liver, which is shrinking, but also they had a tumour in their lung, which is shrinking. So this is black is air, so you like air in the lungs, you don't like tumour. And you can see that that's shrinking away. And here's a fellow that has a melanoma on his cheek. You can see that that's gone away. And here's, again, this is a picture of, this is the heart, and these are the lungs. And you can see that this melanoma here has shrunk away, and so is this one. And you can see, importantly, what they did here is they stuck a needle into it, and they looked down the microscope. And so here you can see these are melanoma cells, and the brown dots are the occasional immune cell that had wandered in and tried to do a job. But as it turns out, when you gave these drugs, you can see these brown cells are the immune cells which are killing off the tumour. And there's much more of them. You can see all that brown stain in there. That wasn't there before. Now again, and here's another fellow who's got, these are all melanoma dots on their skin, and you can see how they all shrink away. So the exciting thing about these drugs is that they also seem to work very effectively. So because these drugs, the PD-1 inhibitors that I've talked to you about, are so new, I can't tell you what percentage of patients are cured yet. We don't know. I can tell you that the latest information is that at 1 year, 80%, 81% of patients who have had these drugs are alive. So that's really revolutionary. In the past, I would have to tell you that actually 81% of patients would be dead by 1 year, but that number has been now completely reversed with these drugs. Whether those 81% of patients will be cured, we don't know. How many will be alive after 2 years and 3 years and 4 years, I don't know. But it bodes well that 81% are alive after a year, because maybe after 2 years that number will only be slightly smaller, and after 3 years maybe slightly smaller, and then it may not change. So we'll have to watch this space, but this is literally the most promising treatment for melanoma that has ever existed. And it also is very important for other cancers. So it turns out that kidney cancer, same thing happens. Occasionally kidney cancers go away spontaneously. When you give this drug to patients with kidney cancers, the tumours also shrink. The immune system is also important. And surprisingly, lung cancers. No one had ever dreamed that lung cancers, that the immune system was trying to attack lung cancers. No one had ever seen a lung cancer disappear by itself. But as it turns out, when you turn on the immune system, there are lung cancers that shrink because of this drug. And it may be that we found one of cancer's weak spots, in that many cancers, more than the ones I've just mentioned, tend to use this mechanism to keep the immune system away. So we may have found an Achilles heel that may help us, not only help us cure melanoma, but also other cancers may be vulnerable. And so that work is going to be coming out in the next few years. So you can imagine, though, however, that having your immune system turned on and not having an off switch anymore may cause side effects. It does. Those side effects, though, are very manageable. So we have had drugs which turn off the immune system very well for decades. That's how you give someone a transplant. When someone has a heart transplant or a liver transplant or a kidney transplant, you turn off their immune system. So we know very well how to turn off someone's immune system. We never really had drugs that turned on the immune system before. So there are side effects, and so some of these side effects generally more applicable to the first drug I mentioned, the ipilimumab, which does cause more side effects. But generally speaking, they're things such as diarrhea, inflammation in the liver, inflammation in the skin, sometimes inflammation in the nerves or the brain, and generally we can deal with them very well. Doctors now are very much aware of those side effects and how to deal with them. So I didn't want to give you the impression that these drugs don't have any side effects. They do, but they're generally very, very manageable. So The issue is, why don't we give these treatments before there is a lot of melanoma? And those types of treatments are called adjuvant treatments. So some of you in the audience I know would have had a discussion with your doctor about a drug which is called interferon. So you would have had your melanoma taken out, and then you would have asked your doctor, as some of my patients ask me, is there anything I can do to stop the melanoma coming back? So we are doing trials now with some of these drugs to work out whether giving these drugs after the melanoma has been removed will help stop the melanoma coming back, because that's ideally what we want to do. We want patients to have their melanoma removed and have adjuvant treatments, so treatments on top of the surgery to stop the melanoma coming back, such that they never come to my clinic with melanoma in their liver or melanoma in their lungs. We don't want that ever to happen. So ideally, we like patients to keep an eye on their skin, see their dermatologist, have melanomas cut out. If they're dangerous, have adjuvant treatments, and never develop melanoma in any other parts of their body. So those trials are being done, and so they take some time. We may have some early answers next year, but it'll probably take at least another 4 or 5 years before we have some definitive answers as to whether doing that works. The other thing that some of you may be asking me, anticipating some of the questions, is, well, you just told us that the BRAF inhibitors work, turn off the engine in the melanoma, and the immune system works, so why don't we give them together? And so that's a very good question, and so we would like to. And again, those trials are in progress. Now, why are they so important? They're important because what I told you was that giving the immune treatment slightly bumps up, or quite a lot, bumps up this curve, so more patients are cured. Giving the vemurafenib makes the melanoma shrink very quickly, but what we ideally want is the melanomas to shrink quickly and to stay away. And that's what putting these two treatments together may do. So again, those trials are being done, and I don't have any answers for you yet. So what can you do? Obviously, we've seen how you can protect yourself from the sun. Make sure your loved ones are protected too. Participate in clinical trials if that's appropriate. Get involved in the Melanoma Network of Canada. One more slide. One more slide. So some of you may ask, well, what trials are we doing now? So trials vary from cancer centre to cancer centre, from country to country. Generally, I can reassure you that generally speaking, the trials which are done in the United States are also done in Canada. So having a sensible discussion with an oncologist in Canada will likely, more than likely, he or she will be able to tell you that yes, there are trials both in Canada and the United States, and generally those trials are also available in Canada. Drug companies these days tend to make things global and not just, as they used to perhaps, leave things in the United States. But I can tell you about Princess Margaret in Ontario that we had trials with a lot of the immune-activating drugs for patients with melanoma that has spread. So melanoma that has spread that needs treatment, and patients that we're trying to cure, either patients that have had some treatment before or not, but those drugs that I mentioned today. We have trials where those adjuvant trials, trying to get rid of any melanoma that may be left over after surgery. So we have some trials with these immunotherapy drugs for patients that have had melanoma that has simply been dangerous melanoma that's been cut out and is no longer there. We have trials with new types of chemotherapies and new combinations of these drugs. So all those things are being done, and it is a very, very exciting time in melanoma. And I think that for the first time I've heard melanoma doctors use the word cure out loud, because that really didn't happen until 2013. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope I've explained things to a level that you'll appreciate to understand how excited I am being a melanoma doctor. And I'll now hand it back to Annette.
Velazquez? Velazquez, I'm so sorry. Dr. Velazquez is at Princess Margaret Hospital as well. Dr. Simpson is also one of his colleagues that's partnering with us to write up a booklet this spring on ocular melanoma, so we're very excited about that. He was born in Mexico City and specialized in ophthalmology with a subspecialty in the retina. He came to Toronto to subspecialize in ocular oncology at the prestigious PMH Cancer Centre, and currently works at the Ocular Oncology Clinic at Princess Margaret Hospital, where he focuses on diagnosing and treating melanoma in the eye, as well as clinical trials for new cancer therapies. So you can imagine how specialized that is. We're so appreciative of that. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome you up and
Okay, good morning everybody. Thanks for the invitation and thanks for the lovely presentation. We're going to talk about UVEAL melanoma. It's a rare kind of melanoma, and some of you have heard of it, some of you unfortunately have had it, but we're gonna talk about what you need to know about it. So first of all, I would like to introduce you to the eye. There's a whole world inside there. Oh, sorry. Seriously? Unfortunately, yes. It is quite rare condition, but it happens, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And it has very different names. You probably have heard ocular melanoma, eye melanoma, uveal melanoma, choroidal, ciliary body, etc. So this refers to uveal melanoma. Refers to these layers. This is the choroid, which is one of the layers of the wall of the eye, including also the ciliary body and the iris. That's what it's called the uvea, and that's what it's called uveal melanoma. And this layer has these melanocytes that produce the melanoma. So the melanocyte, that's the cell that gives the pigmentation to the eye, to the skin, and everything that has color in the body, and it's the one that arises the melanoma from. So is it the culprit? Well, yes and no. Why? Because it also has a very important function. People, just to put it in perspective, the people that don't have a working melanocyte have albinism. So as you can see, it's a very important cell in the body. So yes and no is the culprit. So how is it found? How do we know that we have a melanoma or not? There are two basic ways. One is where the patient noticed something, and the second one is if it's found in a routine checkup. What are the symptoms the symptoms that we can find is blurred vision. If anything that happens with your vision, if it's blurred vision, distorted vision, anything that produces any visual changes. If there's a visual field defect, like you have a part of your vision missing or it's hazy, floaters or even flashing lights, it can manifest in very different ways. And I'll tell you that the other way that we can find this is in a routine checkup. So where is it? Where's that melanoma? So there are three different locations that we talked about before. So one is the iris, which is on the colored part of the eye, and this is a melanoma there. Actually, this is a picture from 1985, and this is just a freckle back then. It was followed for a while, and eventually it grew. You can see the difference in this part, and it was eventually treated. So this is in the iris. The second part where we can find the melanoma is in the ciliary body. You can see a little bit, sorry, that's not the greatest image, but you can see a little something here. And after we dilate the pupil, we open up the eye, so we can see inside. There's a pupil, and we see this mass behind the iris, and that's the ciliary body. And the third location that we can find this tumor inside of the eye is in the choroid. It's in the interior lining of the eye, in that wall of the eye. So this is a tumor that grew quite fast in a young guy. So the difference in time between this picture and this picture is just a couple of months. So this was a fast-growing tumor. This is the original time that we saw the patient. We decided to wait because at this time it wasn't that worrisome, but it grew fast and it was eventually treated. Which, sorry, that's the layer where it is. It's a core. It is inside of the eye. So that brings us to the second question, to the next question. How fast does it grow? It's usually not a fast-growing tumor. That's the norm. That previous tumor was unusual, but this is over a 1 year period of time. 1 year and 1 year, sorry, baseline and 1 year after. And so that's also a melanoma inside of the eye in the choroid. So it's a slow-growing tumor. How common it is? It's quite uncommon. About 6 cases per million per year. So that brings about 180, 190 patients every year in Canada. And it's the most frequent ocular primary malignancy in adults. Who is at risk? Particularly it presents in patients between 60 and 70 years old, and basically Caucasians, fair-skinned people. It's also good to know that, well, it's necessary to know that it can present in at any age, from newborns to very late in life. But this is these ages are the ones that are more risk. Are we sure that we have what we're saying to you, that you have ocular melanoma? Once we know a melanoma, once we see the clinical picture and we are certain that that's the melanoma, we have a 90.7 correlation with histopathology. So we're pretty sure. Once we determine that this is a melanoma, it is pretty sure that it's a melanoma. So where did this come from? It can arise from a freckle that you have inside of your eye, and approximately 6% of the population has it normally without causing any problems. And it can arise from that, but it's just about 1 in 9,000 of those freckles will become something else. And it most usually arises out of nowhere, we call de novo. Is it from the skin, which some people have questions here. Some metastasis from the skin can go to the eye, but it's quite unusual. It's not something that we see commonly. Usually it's separate entities, and it's a completely different scenario. And also, a lot of people, when they're told that you have eye melanoma, they're really concerned, because some of the stories about melanoma and what Dr. Joshua was talking about usually has been regarded as a very aggressive disease. The eye melanoma behaves completely different from skin melanoma. It's usually a more indolent disease and are slow-growing tumors. This is one case that had skin melanoma that went to the eye. But this is, as I told you, it's quite unusual. Is this hereditary? No, for the most part. Just a few cases have been regarded as familial cases, and it's not something that you should be concerned about. So your relatives need to be evaluated, not particularly for this disease. Any person that has any eye problems should be evaluated, but nothing in particular. If you were diagnosed with melanoma, your family is not in the high-risk population. So did I do something wrong? Absolutely not. This is, as Dr. Joshua told, this is not some exposure related, or the evidence at least is not that strong with it. And we haven't found nothing that can prevent this, unfortunately. So how is it classified? The current classification for for melanomas are based on the size of it, on the extension, and the thickness of it. And that gives us this chart, and it classifies it as stage 1, stage 2A, etc. And that provides a 10-year survival. So an approximate, in small tumors, approximately 10%, only 10% of patients will develop metastasis, compared to very large tumors, almost 100% will develop metastasis eventually. Can it be treated? Yes. Fortunately, local tumor control, we're really good with that. The treatment that we like the most is called brachytherapy, which is a very localized form of radiation. It's a plaque made out of gold. This is the top of the plaque, and they come in different sizes. And inside of the plaque, in the back part of the plaque, there are seeds with radioactive material. We use iodine, but some other materials can be used. And that's a very localized form of radiation. That's what we use generally. There's also external radiotherapy, where the radiation is coming from a source outside of the eye. Proton beam is basically the same. And in cases where tumor is too big to be amenable to these treatments, to the radiation, but the radiation will be too large for the eye to receive it, we can always take the eye out. In general, these three in these three kind of treatments, and in particular in brachytherapy, we are successful in treating this tumor locally in about 90% of the cases, which is really good. So this is a chart that shows how the radiation acts in the eye. So the plaque is put on top of the eye. The eye actually we don't touch, and this plaque is placed through a surgery. And this is a tumor, and each plaque is made for each specific kind of tumor. So it's based on the size and the thickness of it, and the radiation that you will receive, it's based on your particular tumor. The great benefit about this treatment is that the radiation is based on your tumor only. So the radiation that is coming to the other structures in the eye and outside of the eye is minimal. So does the radiation kill the tumor? Yes, it does. It gradually over time kills the tumor, but it's also important to know that some part of the tumor will always remain there. Will I be radioactive after treatment? No. The radioactivity goes away as soon as we take the plaque out, but the effect keeps on going. So as I was saying, will the tumor completely disappear? No, some part of the tumor will always remain. And the successful treatment is the treatment that the tumor doesn't grow anymore. As long as it's not growing anymore, we're perfectly fine with that, even if it doesn't shrink. So how long will I have to be followed for life? Unfortunately, the risk for this tumor to develop metastasis is ongoing as long as you live. So can it go outside of the eye? Only 2% of patients have a spread somewhere else at presentation when you first see you. And these are the figures that we were talking about. Approximately 10%, from 10 to 30% will develop metastasis in medium-sized tumors before 10 years. And unfortunately, 50+% of large tumors will develop metastasis. It will go somewhere else during in a 10-year period of time. If it goes somewhere, it most of the time goes to the liver, 95% of the cases. Everywhere else is quite rare. And it's also important to know that micrometastasis, the tumor cells are floating around in everybody's bodies, including in patients with melanoma. So these cells go to the liver usually before this is even diagnosed. And as Dr. Joshua was saying, the immune system is the thing that keeps them under control. And many people is concerned about this tumor going to the brain or the other eye. This is very, very rare. So how do we know if it's a good tumor or it's a bad tumor? All these characteristics are prognostic factors that indicate that it's a high-risk tumor. The latest thing that we have, or the latest thing that is out there, is genetic expression profile. And it classifies in 3 different kinds of tumors. Class 1A, 1B, and 2. And 1A and 1B are regarded as good tumors, or tumors that are unlikely to spread somewhere else, including the liver. So only 2% of patients in class 1A will develop metastasis at 5 years, 21% in 1B, and 72% in class 2. So if you Google a little bit about UVEAL melanoma and classification and genetic factors and so on, you most definitely will come to this site, Castle. They have patented, copyrighted this gene expression profile, and they provide services for anyone that would like to be tested. In the Prince Margaret Hospital, we don't do it regularly. If you would like to have it, we will do it, but only if you request it, and we will talk about why in a few minutes. So if you come to this website, they will show you this. It's called My UVEAL Melanoma, and so you have all these statements. We're planning for the worst until we learned my cancer wasn't likely to spread. So we had a class 1A tumor, which is on the good side. Knowing I'm at high risk helped me get the follow-up by me. So she was classified as class 2. This lovely gentleman with a patch here. I wasn't given information and almost missed my chance to get tested. it is important to know that the testing has to be done before any other kind of treatment is done, including brachytherapy, external radiotherapy, anything. It has to be done before that. And a very powerful statement. The choice to know was mine. It was my cancer, and this is absolutely true. So should I get the genetic testing? There are some disadvantages and some things that we have to consider if we are going to proceed with that. First is that this very small tumors, so we usually only get a fine needle biopsy aspiration, so it's just one needle and just a few cells that we can test, so it's a small sample size. And in any tumor, even grown full melanomas, aggressive melanomas, if you test in different sites, you will get different results. So that's called tumor heterogeneity. Also, the cost of this, unfortunately, at this time is not covered. This is not a standard of care. So, in testing is about $5,000. So it's not that expensive, but it's not cheap by any means. And we don't know still if there are sample risks. If we're putting a needle inside of the eye, this will cause any higher risk for this tumor to spread somewhere else or locally. And there's also the debate about class 1 versus class 2 counseling. Unfortunately, when we're in a very vulnerable state, when we know that we have a melanoma and we get the result of if it's a class 1 or class 2, you can do many crazy things, and we have had this in the past. Some people with good kind of tumors that are unlikely to spread just don't come back to the hospital at all. And on the other way around, very high-risk tumors, some people just travel the world and spend all they have, and unfortunately, or fortunately, they never develop metastasis. So there's a debate. So what these tests can provide is just numbers and probability for these to develop metastasis. And up until now, the class determination, if it's a high-risk tumor or a low-risk tumor, it doesn't change how we manage these tumors, and it doesn't change the way the follow-up is done. So what we don't know about these tumors, are we missing any risk factors? As the skin melanoma is very sun exposure related. We don't know what is causing this. Who and when will develop metastasis, and how to modify the survival. Is there any preventive treatments that we can do? Is there any systemic treatments that we have to be doing? Is there better screening that needs to be done? And basically, we don't know why this tumor keeps developing. So is there hope? Absolutely. There are clinical trials, as all the fabulous work that Dr. Joshua is doing, also Dr. Holt in the Prince Margaret Hospital. They're doing a lot of research, and once the melanoma leaves the eye and goes to the liver, it's treated as a regular melanoma in advanced disease. The greatest challenges is that the metastasis. For the good part, we're really good at treating locally the tumor. We're really successful with that. 90-95% of the cases, it's completely under control. But unfortunately, we don't know who and when they develop metastasis. We know a lot about this tumor and how to treat it locally, but we don't know a lot. Also, we're still missing a big chunks of information. There are multiple research lines, like Dr. Joshua said. And for the most cases, having eye melanoma is bad news, but are not terrible news. Most of the people will have melanoma, they will have treatment, and they will go back to their regular lives forever, and they will not have any other problems. And definitely there is hope. So we call the doctor, we're here for you. This is something that is not usual, and for the most part, we don't know, people don't know a lot about this kind of tumor, so any questions you might have, please just give us a call, and never give up.
And we always like to finish off with a patient story of hope, and we're so very pleased to have Susan Cox here to speak with us today for the next 10 minutes. She is, or maybe half an hour, I don't know. We'll all end up with a parking ticket. Yeah. But Susan, I've known Susan for quite a number of years now. She actually, we met Susan at one of these events several years ago. It was actually Princess Margaret one we do again. This is our 5th year here actually. And she joined the organization as a volunteer and is now leading up a coordination of sort of our regional development in different areas of the country. But she's also spoken so very passionately and with such conviction at so many of our different events across the country, and also for other pharmaceutical events that we've had on as well. And one of the things you always remember about Sue is just her, not only her sense of humor, but her determination in fighting this disease. And to me, she's a true hero and somebody that I sincerely look up to, not only for her positive outlook, but also for her sheer will to overcome this disease and the many challenges of therapy. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome you up and have you share your experiences with us. Thank you.
She's trying to make me cry. Good morning, or good afternoon, good almost afternoon. I apologize to those of you who have heard me tell my story before, one of which would be Dr. Joshua, but he's going to have to sit through this painful story again. But he did say he was a Leafs fan, so maybe, he sat through some other painful things, I don't know. Good morning, my name is Sue. I'm a patient at Princess Margaret here in Toronto. I'm a melanoma patient. I'm the recipient of an investigational drug that's now been approved, and also I'm missing a few pieces from surgeries, but I'm a melanoma survivor to date. I was invited to come today and talk about my love-hate relationship with melanoma and the things I've learned. Some of the things to know about me: I've been married to a great guy for 26 years, and we have a beautiful 24-year-old daughter who's hockey obsessed and a graphic designer, and she works for an OHL team. We have a 17-year-old son who's a high school dude and a semi-pro gamer. I'm a decorator, a gardener, and a volunteer with Melanoma Network. I'm based from home for all the above. I never thought I would have to refer to myself as a cancer patient. The truth is I am. I'm a patient living with metastatic stage 4 melanoma. That's not easy to admit out loud. It's not what you want to be defined by. In 2007, I noticed something on my back that felt like a pimple. When I reached up over my shoulder and strained to touch it with my finger, it popped blood. It looked like a blueberry. My husband agreed. It didn't look good. So I made an appointment with my GP. He said the same thing. That doesn't look good. And referred me to a dermatologist who, while removing it, commented, this really doesn't look good. He called me back within the week to tell me he was rushing my referral to Princess Margaret Hospital. Oh, and that he was sorry. Sorry? What for? Why was he talking all nice to me? How odd. It can't be that big a deal, right? You just cut it out and continue on with your day. It's just skin cancer. We saw a surgeon at Princess Margaret who told us what the risks were. He was very knowledgeable, a bit abrupt, a bit annoyed, seemed very annoyed and superior at the questions I had that I brought with me written down like you're supposed to. Annette's laughing because she had the same surgeon. I won't say who it is. While on my way home, in tears, all the way up the Don Valley, I realized he had to be good, or they wouldn't let him act that way, right? So I had it cut out a couple of months later with a surly surgeon who was excellent, and almost positive he told the surgical staff it didn't look good. I'm just cutting out. Anyway, I remember taking off the bandage after coming home and asking my husband, did the surgeon know it was just a mole? I was horrified. I had no meat left on my shoulder at all. And like 40 stitches, big metal staples. He warned me about the incision, but really? Wow, I thought I might be in trouble here. He did a really great job. He did do a really great job, and you can barely see the scar. I have highly recommended it. Could you pass me my water, please? Step aside, I'm getting all nervous here. Start talking about that surgeon, it brings back nerves. Annette's still laughing because she knows it's true. Word came back that the lymph node sample looked a little dirty, was the word they used. Cancer had most likely spread through the area under my arm, so back to PMH for another surgery to have my lymph nodes removed. So that's 2 surgeries in a month. What do? You do it, right? Around this time I found some inner strength, or maybe I think I just got mad. Another surgery, okay, fine, just get it done. I remember thinking, I remember being told I might have permanent numbness or swelling under my arm, in my arm, which at that point was the least of my worries, but I think it made me more pissed off. So I never stopped using my arm, even in the recovery room. I used it like there was nothing wrong with it. And I'm right-handed, so I think I challenged my anger with the situation into determination. You know that feeling where you've had enough, you're not scared anymore, you're not emotional about it anymore, you've had enough and you're just gonna do it. Not long after, I had a try at the interferon, a very informative discussion with my oncologist, Dr. Hogue. My husband and I left his office feeling it was completely our choice to try it. There had been some numbers put out at the time. It didn't look very effective. And surely it worked, right? I mean, oncologists used it, right? It was the only treatment for melanoma, so it had to work, right? It was developed in 1969 and has never been reformulated over the years. But I felt I should try it, even if the benefit was small. You never know. I have a family. I owed it to them. It made my heart thump so hard and put my blood pressure through the roof that I decided that it would kill me for sure. Even after we reduced the dose twice. I stopped the treatments and hoped I wasn't making a big mistake. I then learned the numbers show it's only effective for 7.5% of the people that use it. And at that point, it was unbelievably the only treatment available for melanoma. I was clear for 3 years, then something interesting happened. I started having small, minor health issues related to my kidneys and bladder. I started getting infections. And persistent problems that kept coming back and wouldn't respond to antibiotics. Oh, and I felt achy all the time, like I had the flu. I wrote it off to being tired. We just, inherited a cottage. Of course, we had everybody we'd ever met at the cottage the first year. Of course, I was the culinary chef of the year that year. It's a lot different now. I take a couple of Advil and feel great. Although still being seen by PMH now only once a year, while at my GP one day in June 2010, I refused another prescription for antibiotics and insisted she find out why was I getting these infections. I directed her to what I thought was a benign node located on my adrenal gland. The node had been there for years. It was a bump. We were watching it. It hadn't grown. Could it be the reason I'm having infections? She said, oh no, these things do that. Don't worry. It's not cancer. By the time I had it removed in January 2011 at Princess Margaret, it was cancer and it was the size of a grapefruit. This was a difficult surgery to say the least. A different surgeon, young, very good, great people skills this time. I looked like I had been opened up like a can of sardines. I think I had hundreds of stitches, but again, you just put your head down and get through it. I have since referred to this as finding my grit. Some people use the term digging in. My daughter says I found my lady balls. Yeah. Whichever it is, I had to find it and hold on. Again, I was super lucky, no spread. The tumor was a crusty exterior and had not spread to any of the surrounding organs or tissues. I spent the winter in our living room, basically with a gas fireplace and a big screen, very lucky to have family looking after me. Around March, I had had enough of the living room and The Price is Right. And it's not the same without Bob Barker. And announced to my family that not only was I no longer sick, but that I would be getting dressed in real clothes, not stretchy clothes, and dusting off my credit card. Call Visa, I'm back. Around this time, I had a CT to find out how we'd done. Our son has special needs. It hadn't occurred to me that there might be some adverse, results from this CT. I was feeling so much better about having had the surgery, and I was on the mend, and I took my son in for the results, and it hadn't occurred to me the tumors might have come back. The tumors might be growing again. So I had him with me in the ridiculous. Anyway, I was shocked to hear there were 3 more tumors growing, one under my collarbone and the other 2 around the original surgical field near my kidney. I was now stage 4 metastatic melanoma, and officially it didn't look good. It was at this time that I realized that thinking positive alone may not get me through this. That thinking positively doesn't hurt, but it's only a piece of the puzzle. Science and new advancements are the puzzle. I was going to have to give myself over to science, along with positive thinking, spirituality, faith, the love from family and friends, good food, the all-important sense of humor, all had to work together for my puzzle to be whole and for me to survive this even for a little longer. I remember getting my stage 4 news from Dr. Hogue at PMH and how kind he was in delivering such awful news, how he apologized to me for having to give me this news. It wasn't his fault I'd used tanning beds winter and summer. It wasn't his fault I'd been a professional sun lover, never using sunscreen. It wasn't his fault I'd been reckless and stupid. By the way, I believe in the future we will look back on the tanning industry the way we now look back at the cigarette industry. They are carcinogenic. I'm proud to have been a very small part in helping to get legislation passed with these lovely ladies to ban tanning to everyone under the age of 18. Because I wouldn't be here right now, probably. And when hearing of my new status, I was told there were new treatments. Some have said if you have to have melanoma, now's a good time. It's true. I've always been lucky. So, as you know, approximately 40 to 50% of all patients with melanoma carry a genetic mutation known as the BRAF mutation. Dr. Joshua talked about. I am one of the very lucky percentile with the V600 mutation. This is the BRAF gene that is needed for one of the new drugs at that time to work, the drug I was being considered for. It was made by GlaxoSmithKline, and it's called dabrafenib. The trial was taking about 345 people, I was told, in my doctor's office. I thought, oh man, there's that many melanoma patients hanging around the waiting room. And I could never get parking. How am I going to get in the study? And what are my odds? So I was alarmed to learn it was 345 people from 8 countries. Not just my country, not just my waiting room. So I started feeling sick. And to add to the stress of it all, I felt myself slipping away a little bit each day, becoming more and more weak and achy from the tumors growing. Advil wasn't working this time. I had to get in that study. I passed the screening, and in April 2011, I was enrolled in the US-based clinical trial for GlaxoSmithKline's BRAF inhibitor, a drug that targets my specific kind of cancer by binding to it and inhibiting the activity of BRAF, which may inhibit the proliferation of the tumor cells containing a mutation in BRAF. It's a mouthful. Basically, this is called targeted therapy. When I was told I was in the study, I knew it was what I needed. I felt I was in the right place at the right time. It was big and I was getting in on it. There was no looking back, no fear, just gratitude. The next day I went to the hospital and left with a little brown bag of medication from what I like to call the super secret pharmacy on the 4th floor. I actually felt like a spy with some top secret formulation, which it actually was. It was all very exciting, honestly. We had a trip planned for Boston for our son's annual hockey tournament the day after I started the drug, and you know, you're not talking him out of anything. He's special, so he's there. So we went. My dosage to start was 150 milligrams twice a day. The first CT, 2 months in, it was official. The tumors were shrinking. We were elated. We actually couldn't believe it. We exhaled, I think. How is it possible, we wondered? Is this really happening? At the next CT at 4 months, they were completely gone. Completely gone. Even the stretched lymph tissue that once held the growing tumors was undetectable on a CT scan. Simply unbelievable. Go science. I would have to be honest though and say this period wasn't without its drama. I had some side effects which after a few months wore me down. I had chills to the bone, the kind that where you get under an electric blanket and turn it on high and still feel cold, even though you feel like your skin is burning. You know it smells hot. You're still cold. Something like a tanning booth. My drug of choice at the time. The cold comes from inside, not even hot liquid helps. I had night sweats where we measured how severe they were by how many times I had to change my clothes and how wet they were. We were up to 4 changes. The bed sheets were damp, and how bad was it? Did I need to lay on a towel or not? In the morning, it looked like I'd been swimming. My hair was so wet. I was dizzy and lightheaded and had no energy. I couldn't walk a flight of stairs. I wasn't interested in food at all. My taste buds were completely different, somebody else's taste buds. I would put 2 or 3 bites of food in my mouth and just, like couldn't even hardly swallow it. So weird. I lost quite a bit of hair. I've got a big balding spot. Everyone doesn't look like it, but I have a big balding spot in the front. By the way, my hair used to be straight. That's the other thing. I swear to God it did. This is all, ladies. And that's the good part. No more shaving, waxing, plucking. This is the best side effect of the drug. They should actually market it for that. And weight loss. They make a fortune. My dosage then was reduced down to 75 milligrams twice daily. It was decided that prednisone would help me with the side effects. I was having a white blood cell inflammatory response, and I needed some relief, and I got it with the steroids. Once the side effects were under control, my lifestyle completely returned to normal. I can do anything I want, I can go anywhere I want, I just style my hair differently. I wear sunscreen and I take my pills. This has been a long-winded way of saying I have officially won the lottery. Forget about a cottage in the Muskokas, a trip around the world, a red sports car, doesn't matter. This drug has extended my life. We do, however, still buy a ticket on the Princess Margaret home lottery. They have some nice prizes. As someone who has the BRAF mutation, I understand the value that personalized treatments play. Patients with metastatic disease don't have time to waste. We need to know right away whether a treatment will be effective or not. And then going for it. I can tell you when you feel sicker day by day, and a lot of people in the room probably know this, you don't have enough energy just to get dressed. Get yourself to your appointments, drive yourself to your appointment, go to the family room, make a phone call, none of that stuff you're doing. So it's huge to have these new treatment options already set up. New treatment options like this one, provide much needed hope to patients like me who until now have been left without adequate treatment options. And I, wishing they had advancements and the opportunities I've had. So, I'm winning my fight. Perhaps for now, perhaps for the long term, nobody knows. I'll find out as I go, I guess, but one thing's for sure, I am lucky No matter what happens, I have family and friends to support me, make me laugh, let me cry when I feel the weight of this. You hear people say cancer has been a gift. Well, I would agree with that. As long as it lets me live longer, it's a gift, I guess. Maybe I won't be the last one to leave the party. Maybe the last one out the door. Maybe I'll be leaving early. Whatever happens, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for life. I'm not going to hold back. That would be sad, to miss out on things you always think you'll have time to do, and you always put them off, and you don't do them. I want the end of my life to be filled with regret. I don't want my end of my life to be filled with things that I regretted never doing. Wouldn't it be wonderful if at the end of your life you marveled at all the places you went, the people you met, people you knew, the experiences you had? That's what I want. Because of this extra time I've had given to me, because of my awesome nurses and doctors, and because Dr. Hope didn't skip out on his science classes, and because the excellent surgeons and the science, I have had 2.5, 3 years handed to me. So this is what I've done with my 3 years. I tell my family and friends how I feel about them. I've been in New York City. We spent Christmas in Maui 1 year. Yes, yes, I was that person. Under the umbrella, fully clothed. That was actually going back to the scene of the crime, really. Fully clothed, watching other bronze young people romp in the surf unknowingly, you know. I've been lucky enough to spread the word about sun safety along the very smart, funny, committed women at Melanoma Network, Annette and Diane. I bought a white upholstered sofa for our living room, which is daring because we have 2 bulldogs that know nice furniture. I took our grown children to Disney World. I committed to and hung grass cloth wallpaper. And you ladies know what I'm talking about, wallpaper's a commitment. I bought a motorcycle. Well, okay, it's not a motorcycle, this is my joke. Well, it's not a motorcycle, it's a scooter, and it's pink. And I named her Miss Pearl. And my husband says she sounds like a sewing machine, which she does. We took our son to England for a special needs hockey tournament and played mostly other Ontario teams. Except the Werewolves of London. That was the one UK team, and they were lovely. We had to make sure every game came out a tie, though. Everybody's very competitive. With the extra time I've had, I've watched our daughter grow into a beautiful, smart, like I said, hockey-obsessed woman who makes me laugh really hard every day. I've watched our son grow into a handsome, kind, thoughtful teenager who makes me feel like the best chef in the world when I cook anything for him. I stopped talking to people I don't like. Yeah, I have no more fake friends. And I say what I mean and I mean what I say, which for me was never a problem. Now I just blame it on cancer. I reconnected with people I should have years ago. I bought some stock in GlaxoSmithKline, which I haven't been allowed to say at any of their things, but I'm going to tell you I did. And I've come to terms with metastatic melanoma, and I got over myself. So whatever happens, I'm happy with the time I gained, and overall, I think I'm just happy. And that's a huge piece of my puzzle. Cheers.